So today we're going to be kicking off our journey series this year. It's called Love Over Ego. And we're going to be following along the first half of the book of Daniel. And I'll just leave it at that. Let's rise and invite the Lord into this space with song.
Our first song is number 10, As the Deer.
This is the Lord. We have waited for him. Let us pray. O Lord Jesus Christ, our Creator and our Savior, thank you for this day. Thank you for all the things that you have placed in our path that will lead us. And thank you for all the truths of your word that are put there to teach us. Help us to become better listeners and better followers of your word. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so on earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. O Lord, forgive us our trespasses. Amen. Turn to the back of your brochure, sing together as a recitation, Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 and 25. Then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever would save their own life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. Anybody hungry? Okay? I got carrots. Yeah? Get carrots. Anyone who wants to, get a carrot. No strings attached. Somebody asked if this is a 24 carat talk, and it's not, actually. I think we got maybe 36 carats. We got carrots in there. Yes, you need. That's a great laugh. So, what instead of carrots, I was offering, I don't know, what do people feel like today? What could be better than carrots? Carrots are pretty good. What's that? Chocolate? Donuts, okay. What? Fresh baked bowls.
Yes.
Oh, bagels, yes. Yeah, okay. Money? All right. Stepping a little outside of the rails, but I like it. Okay, so let's say whatever your absolute favorite food is was up here right now. You can come and get it. But the person who is providing it is someone who has done bad things, so they'll continue to do bad things. Like, let's say, for instance, there's a big stack of donuts, there's chocolate, a big stack of cash. You can come up and get it, but you have to know that this is a gift from somebody who is making you leave your home, leave your family. Finally, he doesn't like your name, so he's going to change your name, and you're going to work for him for the rest of your life. But there's donuts. Do you want the donuts? Let's be honest, a part of you probably still does, right? But in the grand scheme of things, donuts that come from a source like that, you probably don't want. So, the story that we're going through for the next 6 Sundays is about a man named Daniel, and Daniel and 3 friends of his were, in fact, taken away from their homes. They lived in Jerusalem, in Israel, in Judah in particular, and the Babylonian Empire attacked them, conquered their city, and took a lot of the people away. And what we're going to read to you now is about something that happened to them after they had begun living in this new kingdom. Now, one of the things you need to know about Daniel is he was an educated person. He knew how to read and how to write, which not everybody did back then. And he was smart, and he was young, and he was healthy. Apparently he was good looking, he was charismatic, and so the king decided, you know what? You're going to become one of my helpers. Because you can read and write, you can read my commands to people, you can write down laws for me, and you can give advice. So now you're on my side. Alright? And part of the deal is, all the people that were being trained to be these helpers for the bad king, he said, and while you're working for me, which by the way is the rest of your life, you get to eat the same food that I eat, and you drink the same wine that I drink. And he was a king of a huge empire, so he probably had the best food anyone had, literally for hundreds and hundreds of miles. But here's how Daniel and his friends responded. But Daniel resolved that he would not dirty himself with the king's food, or with the wine he drank. Therefore he asked the chief of the eunuchs, which was a title, which basically was the guy who was in charge of all the servants, to allow him not to defile himself. And God gave Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who assigned your food and your drink. For why should he see that you are in worse condition than the youths who are of your own age? So you would endanger my head with the king. What he's saying is, look, I get it, we don't want to eat the king's food. But if you guys don't eat that food, and all the other people that are in this training group with you do, they're going to end up much healthier because they're getting a better diet. And when the king looks at you guys and says, well, what's wrong with these people? Why aren't they looking as healthy or as strong? Why aren't they as big? I might get in trouble, and I don't want to get in trouble. It's a reasonable thing to say. Then Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had assigned over Daniel, and Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, those are his friends, test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance and the appearance of the young men who eat the king's food be observed by you. And then deal with us according to what you see. All right? So it's a test, saying, okay, everyone else is going to eat these great feasts, drink all this wonderful wine. We're just going to eat simple vegetables, water. And then after 10 days, if we're looking like sickly and weak compared to people that get all the really good food, the complex meals, the nice wine, if we don't look as good as them, okay, you're right. If not, we'll see what happens. What do you think happens? Any guesses? Diet of just vegetables and water, you just get so sick and you just shrivel up, right? Could you eat nothing but vegetables and water for 2 weeks? Could you do it? Yeah. Vegetables are actually pretty good for you, right? It might get boring to always eating the same thing. Right. There are lots of different ways of preparing vegetables. Absolutely. You can do a lot of different things with them. Let's see what happens. So, he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, it was seen that they were better in appearance and fatter in flesh, meaning they looked healthier after they got rounder, than all the youths who ate the king's food. And so the steward took away their food and the wine they were to drink and just gave them vegetables. And then it goes on and says that these four, Daniel and his three friends, not only do they become healthier looking, but they also demonstrated themselves to the king as some of the wisest and smartest of all of the people in this group of young men who were being trained. So we're going to get really deep on this one with the adults. For you kids, basically, I want you to think about it. Often in life, you will come to situations where you think something would be fun or enjoyable, but you also know it's wrong. So, let's say, just hypothetically, your sister baked cookies last night, right? Or let's say it's the night that she baked them, and you've gone to bed. You've had a couple of cookies, everyone had a couple, it was great. And you're lying in bed, and you know that the rest of those cookies were for, like, she was going to take them to like a class event the next day. She let you have a couple the night before, and the next day she would take them to school. But you're lying in bed thinking, I really like those two that I ate. I bet she could do with one fewer now. Well, okay. Is it right to go and take cookies in the middle of the night while no one's looking? No, right? Will the cookies taste good? Yeah, no. They still will taste good. This is kind of how hell traps us. Bad things that we know are bad will still give us a small amount of pleasure. The cookie's still going to taste good. But then what happens the next day, when everyone wakes up, and they find out that someone ate not just one, maybe 3 or 4 more cookies in the middle of the night. And there are cookie crumbs in your bed. That's not going to be good. You're going to be facing all sorts of consequences, and it'll be totally not worth the flavor of that cookie in your mouth at that time. So, resist that kind of temptation. When part of you is saying, oh, but it would feel good to do that, but you know in your head that this is a wrong thing to do, go with what's in your head. Go with what you know to be right. And in a short amount of time, that feeling of wanting to have that thing that makes you feel good doesn't go away. All right. To invite you all to our hands for prayer. Lord, help us to resist temptation. Help us to remember that sometimes things that feel good come with strings attached. And help us to hold on to what's right while those cravings pass. Amen. A quick note, today is not a Sunday school day, it is a child care day. But there is a take-home project that is on the table just outside the door when you guys all leave. And let's have a song.
And that song is number 66. Holy, holy. For this song, we're just going to do the first verse and the fourth verse. So you go through, starting at the beginning of the song, over to the second page, and take the little number 1 first ending, back to the beginning. The second time through, jump to the little number 4.
So as I said, we're going to be going through the first half of the book of Daniel in this series. I say the first half because Daniel has two distinct parts. The first part of the book, the first 6 chapters, are a story that takes place in the courts of the kings of Babylon. And then the second half of Daniel is a series of prophecies, visions that Daniel had. And they're not narrative in form, they're just a bunch of distinct prophecies that have to do with the story of the church. So this series, we're just doing the first half, the narrative portion. And let me go back to the beginning of chapter of Daniel. We jumped to the middle with the kids, but I'm going to start at the top with you. So it says this: in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with some of the vessels of the house of God. These would have been the gold implements that were used in worship in the temple. So the king captures Jerusalem and he takes some of the stuff out of the temple. And it says here that the Lord gave him into his hand because this is a consequence of a whole series of events, which are actually described in the second book of Kings, in which the king of Israel and the people of Israel, or king of Judah rather, the people of Judah, turned away from the Lord and walked out from underneath his protection. And so this is a consequence of that. So the start of our story is in some ways where a lot of stories would end. It starts with the defeat and destruction of the kingdom of Judah. And he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, meaning Nebuchadnezzar's God, and placed the vessels to the treasury of his God. And then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, young men without blemish, of good appearance, and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, and to teach those people the literature and language of the Chaldeans. And the king assigned them a daily portion of the food that the king ate, and of the wine that he drank. And they were to be educated for 3 years. And at the end of that time, they were to stand before the king. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah of the tribe of Judah. And the chief of the eunuchs gave them names. Daniel he called Belteshazzar. Hananiah he called Shadrach. Mishael he called Meshach. And Azariah he called Abednego. These names, first thing is, each of the names that these 4 people were born into have something to do with the Lord. Every single one of them is in one way or another attributed to God. And they're all beautiful names that talk about how the Lord is a protector, the Lord is the source of your life. But when they get brought over to Babylon, part of their training is to strip them of their culture and religion, and try to turn them into people that they're not. And each of these names, Belteshazzar, that's the protector of the king. Shadrach means he comes from the god Shadrach. Likewise, Meshach. Azariah becoming Abednego. Each of these are being named after specific Babylonian gods. So it's not just that they're being stripped of their relationship with the Lord, but that they're being assigned to these other gods that they do not worship. They're being dedicated to them. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Now, people have looked into this and they said, well, okay, so what caused Daniel to not want this food? And one of the theories was that Daniel and his friends were very careful about keeping the Levitical law and eating kosher. There's no way to guarantee that the king's food was prepared appropriately. Other people have speculated that it's likely that the food eaten in the king's court was food that had been used in a ritual sacrifice to these various gods. And it's against, again, the law of Moses to eat food that had previously been offered to a false god. The word doesn't say either of those things, though. And really, if you think about it, when I was talking with the kids, I think that's explanation enough. Knowing that this king had conquered their land, had pulled them away from their homes, had stripped them of their identity, changing their Hebrew names that are dedications to their God into these Chaldean names that are, in a sense, blasphemous in their minds. And now he's going to give them nice food. And they reject it. Who are Daniel and who is King Nebuchadnezzar in this story? First thing to always remember, we're trying to get to the deeper meaning of the story, is this is not a story about some good people versus some bad people. As one person once said, the divide between good and evil is not between different people, but runs right down the center of every human heart. Every character in this story is a part of us. We have a Daniel within us. We have a Nebuchadnezzar. The series is called Love Over Ego. So let's talk about definitions for a second. Ego, as it's used in this book, is one way of interpreting the idea of a term that in Swedenborg's writings in Latin was called proprium. And in early translations of those books, a lot of translators kind of threw that in there and said, well, there's no one English word that really captures this, so we'll just leave it in Latin. We're going to call it proprium. And then sort of parenthetically explain, well, this means self, or your sense of self, or that innate feeling we all have that our life and our thoughts and our actions, they come from us and no other source, and that we're in charge. The word ego, interestingly enough, is another example of people kind of throwing their hands up in the air and saying, well, there's no good word for this, so we're going to borrow one from an old language. Ego in Latin just means I. It's a pronoun. But in psychology, it came to mean, one part of sort of a complex model. That's not how ego is used here. In the more sort of colloquial sense, when people talk about ego, they talk about sort of the meanness. When you talk about, oh, that guy's got a huge ego, we all know what that means, right? Or when you say, my ego felt a little bruised there. That's really what we're talking about, is that sort of sense of me. And the relationship between Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar is a very instructive one. Nebuchadnezzar is that ego, that sense of self, and he's in charge. In fact, he's king of Babylon. Babylon shows up all the way at the beginning with the Tower of Babel, at the end in the book of Revelation, and all throughout the Word. Babylon is a symbol of the love of controlling things and the love of being in charge. And right at the top of that love is me. Because we all kind of like to be in charge. It feels good to be in charge of our own lives. And sometimes being in charge of my life goes a whole lot smoother if I can be in charge of your life too. Right? Or at least I want you guys to behave in ways that don't interfere with what I'm trying to do. And that sounds bad, and it kind of is, but it's also really normal. It's where we all start. We all start out with Nebuchadnezzar as king. And if we were all just a bunch of Nebuchadnezzars, life would be pretty bad. But think about all your relationships, think about the people you know, think about the people in this room. It doesn't look like a bunch of King Nebuchadnezzars going to war with each other. We get along. Why? Because we also, every single one of us, have a Daniel within us. Daniel is a prophet. He is the voice of the Lord. You have a conscience. And the conscience that you start with is very small, very weak. But over time, it can grow and can be infilled to the point where it's really running the show, even though technically the king's still there. And in fact, spoiler alert, that's kind of the arc of this story. Daniel starts as a slave, taken away from home, stripped of his cultural identity, his religion, but very quickly he rises to be an incredibly influential and important person in the court of the king. That is the promise for your life. You have an ego, and by the way, there's a reason we have it. Our sense of self is what causes a baby to cry when it's hungry. Our sense of self is what causes us to go out and get jobs and show up every day, even the days we don't feel like it, because the money pays the bills and we like having the stuff. The ego keeps us going in our low moments. It gets us through. It causes us to behave. It's our ego that's afraid of getting arrested or afraid of having a bad reputation, so that we kind of behave ourselves even when we don't feel like it. When we do good for selfish reasons, we're still doing good. The Daniel within us is a call to do good for the sake of good, to listen to the Lord, to not be enticed by the things that the king thinks are pleasurable, but to instead listen to what the Lord says is good. So I'm going to continue on here. So we have this test for 10 days, right? And Daniel and his friends, they eat nothing but plain vegetables and water, while all of the other future advisors of the king are eating the king's food. And after 10 days, they're looking really good. And so the chief of the eunuchs says, okay, you know what? That's the deal. You guys, you're just going to keep eating vegetables and drinking water. The rest are going to eat the king's food and drink wine. And that's just how we're going to do it. And it goes on and says, as for these 4 youths, God gave them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Now it's interesting that it specifically says here, God gave them the learning and the understanding. They're in a college for kingly advisors. From Nebuchadnezzar's standpoint, he's the one who's giving them the learning and the wisdom. He's educated. But we're told that it's really the Lord that's giving them understanding and education. At the end of the time, when the king had commanded that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king spoke with them, seeing how they did. And among all of them, none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Notice, we're getting the real names here. Just because the king changed their names doesn't mean that's not who they are. None was found like them. Therefore, they stood before the king. And in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and sorcerers that were in all his kingdom. And Daniel was there until the first year of King Cyrus. We'll learn more about King Cyrus later. So, this is a powerful illustration of really how our life works. And let's not ignore that there's this big whole long story that happens before we get to Daniel. Think about your life right now. You've made some mistakes, haven't you? I know I have. You've maybe not done things you should have, or done things you shouldn't have, or just made poor choices. Maybe for some period of your life you kind of lived in the fog. Sometimes we go through phases of our life where we're sleepwalking. And it can be discomforting to wake up from that and realize, oh, you know what? I'm really not living the life I intended to. If you think back to a time where things were really, like, were clicking, where you really felt like, okay, my relationship with God is good, my relationship with people is good, everything's really good. I get it. I'm going to follow this path. We have times like that. Maybe you're in a time like that right now, in which case that's great for you. But maybe not. Maybe that's the time in your past. And when you look back on that, you compare where your life actually is, you can say, you know what, I'm kind of disappointing my older self. Well, the story of Daniel tells us that's normal, and it's going to be okay. No matter how entangled with sort of your natural perspective or any selfish inclinations you might have, no matter how messy that gets in your life, there is always a path out. Because the Lord has implanted in you things that will get you out. You have a Daniel and his three friends in your heart right now. And you always have a choice. Am I going to listen to the apparent king of my life, Nebuchadnezzar? Or am I going to listen to these humble servants to my conscience and to all the various, sometimes we call them remains or remnants, that the Lord has stored away in my life as I've grown up. And in every moment, you get to choose. But it's tough, because on the surface, Daniel's just a slave. He's nobody. Nebuchadnezzar, he is king, not just king, but he's the most powerful king we've ever seen. Definitely the most powerful king currently around. And the illusion that each of us is in charge of our own lives is incredibly powerful. In fact, it's impenetrable. Here's how powerful this illusion is. Angels in heaven, people who have made it, they've gone through all the stuff we're going through now, and they've done what they needed to do, and they've cooperated with the Lord, and the Lord has taken everything that's selfish and bad in them and put it to sleep. And they're now in heaven. Emanuel Swedenborg spoke to some angels about this idea of the illusion itself. And some of the highest angels told him, we absolutely know that life isn't ours. That what we think and what we do is coming from the Lord. We 100% know this. And yet, it feels less like that than ever before. We feel totally and utterly ourselves and in charge of ourselves. That's how it feels to us. And the more we understand that God's in charge, the more it feels like we're in charge. That's interesting, isn't it? Sometimes I wonder, well, why do we do that? Because wouldn't it be easier if we just had to constantly sort of put in our face, oh, you're not really in charge, your thoughts are coming from somewhere else, your actions, their power is drawing from somewhere else. If we were forced to confront that, you think, oh, well, then we just have to do the right thing and we clean our act up and things will be better. But the Lord's wiser than we are at first blush. Our first thoughts are often kind of foolish inside, I think. And I get a sense of just sort of gently laughing. Like, oh, I can see how you would think that. In fact, it's because of what I've done. The reason we have this powerful illusion is because that's where freedom comes from. Your ability to respond freely to his love, with love in return, absolutely requires that it feels to you like it is all you. You're totally in charge of your life. We need this illusion. It's part of his plan for us. But we also need to intellectually break free from it. To say, I know that God's in charge. And it feels like he's not. And I'm just going to, with that feeling like I'm in charge, I'm going to do what's right. And trust that it's really the Lord who's giving me wisdom and learning and visions and all the other things that he gives. So we're going to get more and more into this as the series goes on. Mark's going to pick it up next week. There are a lot of really famous episodes in this story. You're probably familiar with most of them. It's a great story. It would make a great Netflix series, in my opinion. I would love to see somebody really do this real well. I try to think how they rewrite it though. So maybe it's good that they haven't. But for this week, here's what I want you guys to concentrate on, all right? We haven't really read much that gives us like detailed what to do other than just refusing the king's food. We're going to get more details and how-tos in the next few stories. But for this week, what I want you to do is I want you to focus on raising your awareness of this relationship between Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel. It's okay if sometimes you make wrong choices this week. I just want you to be aware of the fact that you have a choice to make. When you feel thwarted, have you ever felt thwarted? Yeah, no, you're going to feel thwarted. When somebody cuts you off in traffic, or is going too slow when you're in a hurry to get somewhere, notice the feeling. Notice that what's happening is the part of you that wants what it wants, the me, the self, is angry or upset. And you don't have to put that in charge. You can just say, oh, well, that's my sense of self being thwarted. Okay, I'll note that. When you have a big plan and somebody else does something that ruins that plan, or even somebody does something that is inconvenient in the light of your plans, or when things don't work out and you're going to have to take a different route in your life. Again, notice the feeling. Notice Nebuchadnezzar wanting what he wants, wanting to be in charge. I'm the king. And know that just because he's the king doesn't mean he's really in charge. Just because everything good in the world can be claimed by him, by you, by me, just as the holy things of the temple, now they're in Nebuchadnezzar's God's temple. These people who follow the Lord, I'm going to change their names, and now they're going to follow me and my gods. This is what the self does. It appropriates, appropriate connects, appropriates everything to itself. Says, mine, I'm in charge. But just because it says that doesn't mean it's true. You don't have to let your ego rule you. Now, there's a tricky philosophical problem there when I say you don't have to let your ego rule you, because your ego is literally you. You don't have to let you rule you. Think about that for a second. There is a little bit of a paradox here, which is actually kind of fun. This is Christian theology, but there's a lot of Eastern thought that fits into this as well. But that's a whole different story. This week, just notice. Notice when self gets upset. And notice, you can choose to let that be in charge or not. And the next week, we can talk more about things you can do about that. I'd like to invite you all to bow your heads for a time of prayer. Oh Lord, help us to be mindful of your voice, to hear your voice over our own voice. Help us to notice that you are really in charge. And hear now the silent prayers of each of our hearts. In your name, Lord, we pray. Amen.
Please stand for our next song, which is number 29, Come to Me. Now may the grace of our Lord God, Jesus Christ, be with you all. Amen. Our closing song will be number 142, Shine, Jesus, Shine.
grace as well. Are you handing out like food or just saying something? Okay, fine. You could say something. Any questions, any thoughts? Yes.
Well, since we're doing Daniel, I think it's a good time to think about the fiery furnace over the next couple of weeks.
Yes. Yes, it is far too cool. Makes the furnace sound like a nice thing, doesn't it? Yes, but we will get to the fiery furnace in a couple of weeks. That's coming up. Anything else?
So when you were talking about how angels in heaven feel more sense of self, even though they know that the Lord is the one that's really in charge more than they did when they were in this world, it reminded me of the idea when you're raising your kids and you want them to take on more responsibility. And as they do that, then you're willing to give them more freedom. And
Yeah.
so that was just a thought that came to mind for me.
Yeah. Which from a kid's standpoint can definitely feel like, oh, you'll let me be free so long as I do what you want. But from the mature perspective looking down, yeah, it's actually, well, no, that's how freedom works. Yeah. I like that parallel.
Are the vegetables and water versus the king's wine food telling us something particular symbolically?
Yes, and that's like another 20-minute sermon. But a super simple part of it is the way our sense of self works is it causes us to instinctively interpret anything that wants as good, and anything that it doesn't as bad. And so the king's food is kind of an illusion. This is what the king thinks is good to eat. And these are the things that in the king's eyes are not just truth, which is water, but truth and filled with life, which is what wine is. And not just vegetables, but vegetables and meat and grains and like a full meal. And so we're kind of seeing things from the illusionary king perspective when we see that food, that wine. And what Daniel's saying is, well, because that's coming from the king, I don't trust it. And so I just want simple good that I know is good, that I don't have to question the source of. And simple truth that I get straight from the word without anything added to it.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Good.
Anybody else? All right. I'm going to go right to announcements then. Got a couple of announcements. Grab my sheet. So, first of all, we have a program that goes with this. There are books called Love Over Ego. We have some of them here. We can give them to you at our cost, which is $15 per book. If you'd like to have this book and $15 is a hardship for you, let's talk. I don't want that to be a reason for you to not have it. And we're happy to even give books away if that's going to make a difference in your life. And this book, like past Journey workbooks, has daily readings broken up into weeks and has materials that you can go through on your own or in the context of a small group of friends. And so, in addition to our Sunday sermons and these books, we're offering groups. I know of two groups that are forming. One of them, Roxanne Young, is offering a group on Monday evenings. And then there will be at least one more group that either Mark or I will be hosting. And the exact date of that hasn't been set yet. It's kind of depending upon what people are looking for. If you'd like to get some friends together in your home, we don't even have to be people in the church. This program works really well with people who have almost no knowledge of New Church doctrine. It's designed to be very friendly for people sort of coming in from that perspective. Or if there are people in the church who'd like to get together within your home, it's really easy. The book gives you sort of the outlines of what to do. All you got to do is do the reading and then talk, enjoy one another's company, and see what happens. So, if you'd like to host a group, or if you'd like to sign up for one of the two groups that's already forming, talk to me either face-to-face today or throughout the week, or send me an email or give me a call. I think my phone number and email address are on the bottom of the announcement time here. So that's one announcement. Second announcement, Trivia Night is coming March 2nd. It's a lot of fun. It raises money to help the church perform all sorts of uses. I encourage you to read more details about it here. And then finally, the school has its Winter Wonderland program coming up. It's going to be February 2nd, starting at 9:30 in the morning. And this is something we've done for a number of years now. And it's fun for the kids. There's a bouncy house, there's a craft table, there's a concert. Kids who go always have a great time. And this is something that we do to raise awareness in our community for the school. And the cost is $3 at the door. However, if you are in the church or already have a student in the school, if you contact Kendra, she can get you free tickets, but you have to contact her before the day of the event. Alright? So those are the announcements for today. I hope you guys all have a great Sunday and a great week.